Let me start this movie by saying that we are going to talk about the operators, but we are not going to talk about all of them. Now, there is a reason why we are not talking about all of them because simply there are some operators which we can simply directly talk about them in general, but still there are some of them which requires additional skills to talk about them. Like for example, it requires some conditionals or similar things to understand. But regardless of that, let me go on to the full screen and try to talk about what we have right now. Now you might want to open your file that says 04 operators.playground. Now you can see that from line number 11 we have got an assignment of value, which is pretty common, but we don't actually bother too much about it because it's so obvious and so common. Now it says var life is equals to 5. So I'm trying to have a life which is my variable and trying to assign a value of 5 into it. So it works really simple. The right hand side is the value that you want to assign into the left hand side of value, and it is being assigned by equal. Now this is how it works. But there is one problem in the Swift. I would not say that as a problem, it's a feature to just make sure that everything looks good, and you might have already fallen into it. Now Swift says that make sure it looks good and it's look in the unity out there everywhere. Now for example, if I say life is equals to 5, Swift wants you to say that this should be equal. Like for example, if I say something like this, you can see it pops me an error. So make sure that your white spaces are equal out there. Like in this case, it's good. But if I also do something like this, now this is also going to problem because it is uneven now. Now Swift says you can do something like this, but you can see it is really cluttered out there and it's not that much visible. So I would never advise anyone to do so. What I would say, just try to have equal things out there, like there is an equal space before the equal and after the equal as well. So assignment of the values is pretty much important and we have been doing quite a lot. Now let's talk about a few operations out there. I have written a couple of lines for you just to save the tip taps of the keyboard. Now we have got an arithmetic operation and the usual suspects are plus, minus, multiply, divide and the modulus. Pretty simple and the usual stuff that we do in the mathematics. Like we can add the value, like here you can see life and bonus score are being added. It gives a 15 because life was having a value of 5 and the bonus score having a value of 10. And similarly we can multiply, divide and do a lot of stuff out there. Now you can also see we have got a modulo operator for those who are new to the programming. I would like to say that modulo is just a thing which returns you the remainder, whatever is left after the division. Like for example, if I divide 9 by the 2, you can see there is an answer of 1, which is a remainder. Okay, after that, let's move on to the prefix and the postfix operator. Now here comes a lot of confusion, but before that also let's talk about this one. Now it is so common in our programming that we want to increment the value just by 1 that we have got a shorthand for it. Like for example, if I say balance equals to balance plus 1, we would not like to call this much quite long. I would like to rather call it as a plus plus balance or balance plus plus. But what's the difference in them? Both gives us the value 22 and there is a plus plus before and there is a plus plus after. Now let me get you there. There is a huge difference between them. Now right now you cannot see the difference simply because they are not doing anything right now, but later on we will discuss again that. Now these are known as the prefix and the postfix operator. Now this one is the prefix because the plus plus is at the pre. Again, it could have minus minus or anything like that. And this is known as the postfix because the operations are doing at afterward. Now here is a simple thing that you can take from this video is simply the prefix operator says that first I'll increase the value and then you will get the value. Now in this line it doesn't do anything, that's why it's returning the 22. But bear with me, it really makes a lot of difference in the real world programming and we will come back onto that. Now the postfix operator says that I'll first use the value and then I'll increase that. Now again, if it is on a separate line, doesn't make a difference. I like to use the balance plus plus quite a lot because it's my habit, nothing after all that at that. Now let's also talk about the overflow of the operations. Now I will not go much into the deep. I'll just give you a simple example that yes, it exists. Now for example, we already know that the floats and integers, everything has got a maximum memory size which we can assign. Like for example, if I talk about simply just the integer value or something like that, we know there is a maximum value being assigned to that. And we can assign the maximum value by using, let's say I'm creating a variable and I'm assigning integer 16 bytes and assigning a maximum value to it, which is 32767. Now, what happens if I want to increase the value with that? Obviously, the variable was not defined to hold the values more than this. So if I say something like plus equals, not like that, plus equals 1, and I enter, it gives me an error. Okay, here it is. And it says, it's a execution bad instruction because you have already overflowed the values. But there are few programmers who like to intentionally go with the overflows of the operations. So yes, there are options in the Swift by which you can do that. Let me just show you, and just to remind that yes, they exist. Nothing more than that we are going to follow up. Now this time the value is being increased and you can see we are looping it through. So because integer 16 has got a value in the plus range and the minus range, so that is why it is out there. Now yes, we have got a minus values and the plus values and all of that. But if you didn't got that, nothing to worry about. We are not going to get into this much of system programming right now about the overflows and all of that, but I wanted you make sure that yes, it exists and you are aware of that. Now let's move on to the easy stuff again, back in the comparison operator. Now what is this comparison? Now many times in the programming we like to deal up with the conditional situation. What happens if I do this? Or if the condition is, let's say, a 40 degree, whether I would like to take an umbrella or simply an air conditioned car, and just like a lot of things happen. So here we got a comparison, and in the next movie it is going to be really important about how the comparison is being done. So let's say A is having a value of 3 and B is having a value of 4. So we checked out if A is equals to B. Notice we are not assigning anything because there's a double equal. Single equal means assignment, double equal means we are comparing. So I'm saying A is equals to B, and of course it will return me false because A is not equals to B. I'm checking A is not equals to B. Now this exclamation has got a lot of roles in the Swift. Right now with the equal sign, it just says that I'm checking for not equal. But again, there are a lot of use for the exclamation. We'll talk about it later on. And then again, the usual suspects, the less than, greater than, less than equal to, greater than or equal to. And this would be much more beneficial when we will be talking about the conditionals, the loopings and all of that. So quite a great look about the simplest of the operators, pretty good and pretty handy. Again, I would recommend you to go through with the documentation about this overflow if you are interested. If not at all, let's just leave it to me. There will be definitely one more movie about discussing about the overflows and all of that. So let's move on to the next movie.